Dun, 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 funky fantasy, dun, 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 the bowl, dun, 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 Stratus and Rose, dun, 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 Superman sucks. Welcome back to the War of Nerds podcast, everybody. I started with shots fired because Superman literally sucks. He's the worst DC character ever created because he's just white bread. He's boring. He's literally everything special about him came from a different atmosphere. Yes, I'm quoting College Humor. We hope you're all having a fantastic night, and thank you for coming back to listen to us ramble about nerdy things. We are your bearded nerdy hosts, and we always will be. So, if you're not feeling your blood pressure spike yet, then you're probably in agreement with us. But if your blood pressure's spiking and you're ready to throw fists, good. That's what we're
Welcome
here
to
for.
a war of nerds.
This would be fun.
You know, or like a W. That's more like a Y. YMCA. So why does Superman suck?
For me,
Oh, so much to
For either
say.
of you. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Secretly, Superman doesn't actually suck. He's literally trash. I mean, it's worse than suck. He's
yeah, I was gonna
can't do
say
this. I can't do it with a straight face.
one of his powers is to blow really hard, right? Not suck, so it should be the other way around. Superman blows.
Superman blows.
So my personal opinion on Superman is he's too much to be taken down. Like he's this unbeatable, unimaginable strong thing with this one weakness that people are able to exploit that is supposed to be this rare item, but yet it's plentiful somehow when you have to take him down. And just the basis of him being this good guy with these unbeatable powers, and he's so strong that he can stop you no matter what, but then you just give him this one weakness that if you take away, all of a sudden he's he's the opposite of everything. He's completely weak, he's completely vulnerable, and it's so hard to buy into that character for me personally, as opposed to having a more developed character or story arc where there's a reason why they're doing what they're doing. For me
Yeah.
personally, I don't feel for him. Like you hear his story of coming from Krypton and his world's being destroyed and he's sent here and he's raised by these two awesome people. He didn't even know his parents, but yet he gets replacement parents that are equally as amazing. So then like the whole tortured orphan thing goes out the window because I don't feel for him at all because he gets a great life here and he's boss with all of his abilities. So it's like I don't get the connection for me personally. So that's my beef with him starting off.
One of my favorite quotes, and it's when someone's like complaining, but their complaining is just bragging with a different coat. It's like, oh, my wallet can't hold all the hundreds that I have. It's just, do you know what that's like? My diamond shoes, they kind of squeeze my feet. I should have gotten a larger size and used more diamonds, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't, so they really hurt. Have you seen my shiny? It's like you're not complaining, you're bragging, but understand the common folk complain a lot because we got a lot of BS going on. So you're trying and it's not working. But yeah, Superman for me is the perfect character. He's the character that when I read a book and they can't do any wrong, they're always winning. They never have any real problem that actually tests them. Because too many times you see Superman, he'll get shot with a krypton, kryptonite bullet, and he'll be okay because some hand wavy magic thing, his body can really regenerate even when he's shot with a kryptonite bullet, and something occurs and he's really okay again. But like in reality, that would be a great way. Like Superman getting shot and killed would be a thing that would happen if a real villain got a hold of it. Like, and you take my favorite superhero, the Hulk, who is equally strong, if not stronger, in my opinion. And he's got the problem of he's a rampaging maniac when he goes to berserk. And Superman doesn't have that. He has complete control of his strength. He has complete control over his other powers. He can fly. He's a goody two shoes. And it's like, what is the point of watching this? Like, if you're just that great and you win all the time, what's the point? Like, I don't. It's not even like with Batman or other superheroes where you're like, man, he failed or he lost or he's holding the weight of something he couldn't do. There's nothing. They even brought in Doomsday to kill Superman, and he still survived.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that old playground thing you sit on when you were a kid, the teeter-totter? One side. Picture a sumo wrestler on one side and a kindergarten child on the other side. That's Superman. Okay? Literally perfect. There is nothing about him that has flaws. This is why they had to create the whole kryptonite thing. Because at first they didn't have that in the comics. It was just Superman was lolly, lolly, lolly. Perfect. It's like, what are you supposed to do? If a character has no flaws whatsoever and you can't beat them, they're really not enjoyable. That would be like if Captain America couldn't be killed. So not only is he America's first like superhero and he's great and all this, you know, but yeah, I mean, Superman, he can be killed if they really wanted to actually give him some depth. They could be like Barry Allen went evil, or the Reverse Flash came over and phased his hand through Superman's chest and ripped his heart out. That'd do it. Yeah, I'm just saying. Or somebody as, intelligent as Eobard Thawne could probably figure out how to create a red sun device and just fry Superman's organs and just rip them, just phase and rip them all out piece by piece. And then just drizzle a little bit of kryptonite dust for the finishing touch. And, just like when you're adding a little salt when you're done. But that's the thing. There's been so many parodies about like Batman. You're boring. Everybody knows who you are, Clark. You're boring. You're kryptonite. Hope starts with an H, stupid. Like, it's I, Superman bothers me.
Well, I remember from
I
the Justice League show, it was Flash and Superman. And they were going to race, and I was like, okay, so Flash would win. It just makes sense. You bill him as the fastest man alive, and yet Superman still keeps up with him. And I think they lean towards Superman winning. I'm like, enough. Just give him some type of setback. Let Flash be faster. Let Batman be smarter. And that's how they could beat him if they had to, instead of him just being, I'm the perfectness.
Yeah. And I think that's
oh no,
a huge issue there is like everything he is better than the DC equivalent of that power. Flash, he's supposedly faster than Flash, although it's like argued back and forth, but then yet you see him do things where he equals the Flash's speed or whatever, or he also turns back time the same way the Flash can with his speed. So like even if he's not faster than the Flash, he's very close or on par. His strength is beyond any of the strong DC superpowers. So like the fact that you're giving him equivalent or greater than the other heroes that have that superpower, like, well, then why does that other superhero exist at all if Superman can do it for them?
it's like the song goes, anything you can do, I can do better. Anything you can do, I can do better than you. No, you can't. Yes, I can. Well, here's the thing. Superman can fly. Here's the thing. Supergirl's actually faster than Superman. But anyways, that's a whole nother can of worms. But I'm team Supergirl. I actually find her more interesting than Clark because she's dealt with more things that make her more vulnerable as a character. Personally, for me, maybe it's from the TV
Doesn't she
show.
actually
Maybe it's
have
from
of her time on Krypton? Like, she has actual memories of Krypton and living there.
yes, correct. She's also older than him, so there's that aspect of it. And her pod got knocked off. I can't remember how it happened, and I'm not gonna quote myself inaccurately, but I just like Supergirl's story a little bit more, and I like her character a bit more, just because of the fact that, I mean, she's stronger than Clark, so it's finally something that the perfect Superman isn't as perfect as he thinks he is, and then faster than the Flash, pound sand. All right, anybody who believes that nonsense is full of crap. Go read the Flash comics. Yes, Superman can fly as fast as like supersonic speed, like jet, like go past the sound barrier. That's great. Barry Allen did that like within his first week of training. Barry Allen can run he can time travel. Superman can't do that. Barry Allen is faster because he can move fast enough to literally open portals through time and the multiverse.
Mm.
So no matter what anybody says about Superman, he's faster. Why do you do that? I mean, they did that kind of thing in the CW show where like Barry and Supergirl raced, but you could still see that Barry had the edge on Supergirl. So even that goes to point like Supergirl's fast at flying. She's fast. But even when they're showing them both going around the whole world to try to stop a villain, Supergirl's going around quick, but you can see Barry's stream going around twice as fast. So he's making 2 laps for every 1 lap she's making, essentially. So I wish that they would show that stuff with like all the old school Superman movies and stuff, like with what the heck was his name?
Christopher Reed or
Yeah.
Thank you, Christopher Reeves. He was the like one of the original Supermans. I don't remember if somebody came before him or not. Somebody might have. I honestly don't know. I never watched that many of the Superman movies. I was more of a Smallville fan, and I liked Superman Returns with Brandon Routh. I really like that one.
But even
And
Smallville made him more relatable than just the arc of
yes,
Superman himself.
yeah, exactly. And when he raced Barry Allen, he did not win. Barry was faster, as it should be. Each hero needs to have something that makes them special. Superman can't be better at everything than everybody because then he's just boring. What do you need all your Justice League for if Superman is like, I'm stronger than everybody, I'm faster than everybody, I got laser vision, perfect hearing, X-rays? Literally go die. Doomsday, do it right next time. All right, so that was why I enjoyed Smallville, because yeah, it irritated me that he didn't learn to fly until literally the last season of Smallville. I thought that was pretty stupid. But
I did find it funny, like even in Smallville, the red kryptonite just made him more badass than it did make him weaker or worse. It made him a better character being under red kryptonite's effects rather. And don't get me wrong, I did enjoy Smallville. I think they did wonders for the Superman character in that universe. But I do agree, like in the regular lore of Superman, you're telling me that red kryptonite makes him more cool and more of an interesting character than him being normally him.
they talk about his emotions. It takes off his limits his inhibition and makes him more willing to speak his mind and talk about how he actually feels. And in Smallville, the things that they did that made me enjoy the character of Superman for a time, for a time, anybody who's listening, I still hate Superman, but the strongly dislike would be the proper word. But Henry Cavill was a great Superman. I enjoyed him. Everything else about the Superman movies and the DC movies were garbage. Literally everything about them. They had a good actor to play Zod, so great. Not like we haven't seen Zod before. Only like 10 or 11 times, no big deal. But nobody played Lex Luthor better than Michael Rosenblum. For me, at least, in my opinion, in Smallville, Michael Rosenblum was the best version of Lex Luthor. And that's one thing about the guy in Supergirl actually played. So you remember 2.5 Men, right? The guy who played opposite Charlie Sheen played Lex Luthor in the CW universe, and he did a great job. Actually, really quite phenomenal. He was really close with Michael Rosenblum. But that's kind of what brings me. What makes Superman interesting is not him himself. It's the villains that he has to face.
I was gonna say I like the more Lex Luthors in every version of Superman that there have been more than the character of Superman. So
yeah. That's it's kind of like with Batman too. Like Batman's pretty boring, quite honestly. He's another boring character. I mean, he's less boring than Superman. He's just really rich and has a lot of technology. And again, his
I think he's got
parents
a decent
died.
backstory.
His backstory, yes. Um, but him as just he's just a rich dude with skilled with martial arts. I don't know. I find Green Arrow more of an interesting character than Batman. But me, I'm more for the B characters than I am for the main crew.
Yeah.
But if we're going to compare Batman to Superman, Batman's more of a badass than Superman is because Batman created the Arkham Knight suit, the Kryptonite suit, to literally fight against Superman. I remember playing in the video game, big old Arkham Knight video game with the Kryptonite suit, and you're like beating the crap out of stuff. And
See,
his
and I don't want to derail the conversation, but that is something I'd like to see more of. Uh, you've got, and this is more of like a versus Y kind of thing, where you've got Batman versus Superman movies or shows, and you've got Freddy versus Jason, and they can't have a winner for one reason or another. No, there would be a winner in Batman
Mhm.
versus Superman, depending on the setup that you build. If Superman is able to run free reign and beat the crud out of Bruce Wayne before he can think about a solution, then Superman wins. Just because we've just talked about that he's the perfect character, which is so stupid. He can kick the crud out of any mortal. But if Batman has time to plan and set up for the fight, then Batman wins because he's just smarter. And they never do that. They always, oh well, it's a tie, or we leave it ambiguous. You don't really know who won. Enough of that. We all know who would win given certain situations. Just give us that, and then make another movie or a spin-off or an alternate ending where you change who wins so that you still get that ambiguity, but you do get an actual answer. That's my rant.
I want somebody in the comics to challenge me with this one. Drop somebody in the comments section, a character in the DC universe that could beat Barry Allen if Barry Allen decided to be evil. Name one person who could beat evil Flash. I'll wait.
We're gonna
My
wait
second
for the
favorite
comments to
DC
show up.
hero.
Yeah, no. I won't actually wait for that. It was just dramatic pause. I'm sure there's people like Mr. Mistpitalik, and like deities and gods and stuff like that. But when it comes to like every average day characters, Barry Allen's about as OP as it gets. Um, Superman's OP too. But the thing that makes Barry Allen the most OP character in the DC comics, in my opinion, is that literally he has every tool that he needs to defeat any of his enemies. But he's still a human being. He still bleeds. He can still be hurt. He can still be killed. But the thing that makes him awesome is that he's so fast. He's able to not only make himself more intelligent by speed reading, he can also he's a brilliant CSI, and he's got an excellent crew around him of people who help him. And yes, he can time travel and stuff. But like, well, it's just like Superman, wasn't it? But with Barry, he doesn't do the time travel thing all the time because then you end up with Flashpoint, and Barry understands the consequences of said things. So if Barry really wanted to, Barry could jack the entire world up and not care about it. He could do it on purpose. If he was evil, create a whole nother Flashpoint and then go around and slaughter everybody.
So I'm gonna say this, and this is mainly because the DC shows when I was growing up, I did not like the Flash growing up. I thought he was extremely boring because all I thought was he's fast. He can run really fast. I know, Nathan. Calm down for 2 seconds. Uh, I didn't know about all the additional powers that he had because he was weak. So I was like, oh, so he's super fast. He must be able to beat people up. But they never did that for him in the show. He never, like, I imagine you punch fast enough and enough, it's gonna hurt somebody because you have like the water drip Chinese torture or Japanese torture where it's a single drop of water falling in the exact same spot over and over again. It eventually hurts and becomes torture. You have Barry Allen who could probably punch a million punches a minute, it's going to eventually break bone just at a sheer number. But they never did those kinds of things. So I never got to understand the Flash fully until I was much older and experienced more content from the Flash.
Yeah.
But I did just on that surface, I thought it was boring because you don't get time travel often. You don't get you have Superman normally in those mooch cartoons where he's doing more in your face damage. He's punching people across town where Barry is just running up on top of them and crap talking them, which is a superpower in and of itself. But I'm with you. I think that Barry is extremely powerful, can move his body fast enough to reach in and pull out someone's heart if he wanted to.
Mhm.
He could run fast enough to cause a tornado or something to a vacuum to kill somebody that way or harm somebody that way.
There was a part in the show, in the TV show, where him, Wally West, and Jesse Quick, and they all three were on a jet. This jet's engines had gotten taken out, and they were coming in on Central City, and it was going to crash. All three of them put their hands on the plane and phased the entire plane and people so that it would go through the bridge and land safely. That's what the Flash can do, stuff like that. And that's why I love the CW's TV show of the Flash, because since like the 1990s Flash TV show, which was still good, it was really good, but the CW version of the Flash with Grant Gustin, you get to see every intricate part of not just the Flash villains, like the Reversed Flash, the Thinker, which is a problem in itself, Savitar, Zoom. I mean, I go on and on and on. Cicada. So DC has one thing, and I think in common across all the heroes, is that they have awesome, awesome villains.
Mhm.
And these villains aren't just like Marvel villains, where Marvel villains don't really have these awful, tragic, like deep backstories. They're just like, I'm a god. Like Obadiah Stane. Rah, 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 rah. Tony Stark built this in a cave with a box of scraps. So you're
Some
basically butthurt. That's what created your villain story.
Yeah, they're kind of
Okay.
like a lot of bad for bad sake or villainous for
Yes.
villain's sake, and maybe some grain of almost like the original Broly in Dragon Ball Z. He doesn't like Kakarot because he cried, so my entire life is about ruining them. I don't like Tony
Yeah.
Stark because he's smarter than me. I'm gonna ruin his life. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's we that was the majority of villains in the MCU. Now Thanos was more of the philosopher type, Infinity War Thanos, not Endgame Thanos. Endgame Thanos was more of the warrior, like I'm ready to like I got the Infinity Sword, I'm going to destroy you all. Whereas the Infinity War version of Thanos, he'd already gotten to the point where he was just like, I understand what I have to do, and none of you will understand this, but in order, you all are a bunch of insects that are crowding up the Earth, the universe, and in order for the universe to thrive, half has to die. So it's just like he was relatable as a villain because you're like, is he right? And then later with the Celestials, you're like really wondering, like, is he right? Maybe he is. When it comes to the DC villains, though, I think each one of them have they're like really interesting backstories. Like Ra's al Ghul is the leader of the League of Assassins, the League of Shadows. Like he's kind of more of a mysterious character, but still it's interesting. You got people like the Joker, who's just this maniacal gangster psychopath who his backstory is pretty interesting too, as psychopaths go. But let's talk about Superman villains. Lex Luthor.
He rivals the Joker for me.
Hmm.
No, hands down, he does. He's a human being,
Hmm?
and there's very, very few human being villains that really hit the mark. Lex Luthor, the Joker, Kingpin. I know that's Marvel, but you don't
In general.
see like human villains who have that they make you fear them for one reason or another. Now, Lex Luthor's why is Lex Luthor for you? Why do you enjoy him so much?
But I think like he's getting gaslit the whole entire time. Like, no, I'm not super. I'm not amazing. I'm not an alien. And he's like, but I have proof. No, you are. Like, you are from outer. Like, and especially in Smallville, he wants to be his friend to start. Like, I just want you to trust me. Like, tell me. I wanna be there for you. I want to be one of your group that you tell everything to. And he just keeps pushing him away for no good reason. And he ends up being like, fine, I know I'm right. And you ignoring me and shutting me out only proves I'm right. So the only thing I know left to do is be your enemy. And it's kind of like you forced me into this role. And as we've talked about prior, that's one of my favorite villain archetypes is the hero make their own villain.
Mhm.
And that's what Lex Luthor is for me. He's a villain because he had no other choice. He could have gone about his life and been like, whatever, I don't care. But he was so passionate about the fact that he wanted to be Superman's friend, wanted to know all that he could about him, and he got punched in the face metaphorically for it and said, you know what, fine, I will be the worst nightmare you've ever created. And that's why I like Lex Luthor.
And I think Smallville's version of Lex Luthor is the best Lex Luthor that, at least across cinema. Some would argue that old school Christopher Reeves, that Lex Luthor was that was old school good Lex Luthor. I enjoyed him.
I did like the
Just
cartoon version of Lex Luthor from the 90s.
Ryan, you look like you got something on the tip of your tongue, man. Hit it. Come on now, brother. Give it to us.
Gene Hackman. He is my favorite Lex Luthor of all times. He was from the early Superman movies. Um,
Christopher Reeves, right?
yes, and
Yep.
not the first one. I think he's maybe the second or the third movie that came out around the original set.
I'll look it up.
But for me, Lex Luthor was the opposite version of Batman or Iron Man, where he had the money to become the quote unquote evil genius of the world, where he could do the Austin Powers villain type stuff, but on a scale where you're fighting a superhero, not uh, a secret agent. So he had the ability to do all these cool things with his money for the wrong reasons, of course, but he also had a very like logical approach to how he would one, fight Superman, and two, like discredit Superman. A lot of Lex Luthor's story arcs are him trying to paint Superman as a villain or as something the world doesn't need, or that he is an alien and we shouldn't accept him for that because he's not human. He can't be our symbol. And like he uses those mind games of the people to like influence like regular citizens against Superman. And I just the way they make Lex Luthor fill all those roles while making them all make sense, like that is the one thing that redeems it for me when I do watch a Superman movie or show, is the fact that that
Mm.
villain is more likable, or even if like you hate to say, oh yeah, I like the villain because you're like, oh, am I evil because I like the villain? But that character is more likable and relatable than the hero. Yeah, you want the hero to win, but at the same time, you get this point of where you're like, okay, yeah, I could buy him. Yeah.
So Gene Hackman was in the first Superman movie, which came out in 1978, and he was also in Superman 2 as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So he was Lex Luthor in the first two Superman movies. And then, funny enough, in Superman 3, Annette O'Toole, who played his Clark's mother in Smallville, she was Lana Lang in
Oh,
Superman 3.
I
So
did
Oh,
not
no
I thought
realize
way.
that
that.
was kind of cool. Yeah, you didn't that was the oh, hold
Cameo
on.
or,
Let me make
or
sure.
Easter egg.
Yep. She was Smallville because I had to look at that for a second because Annette O'Toole played because John Schneider played Jonathan Kent. And yeah, Annette O'Toole played his mother. I'm
That's
looking at it
awesome.
right now, Martha Kent.
I
And
do have a I do have a question, Nathan. You haven't answered, so you go. But then I have a question.
yeah.
Uh, so why do
Um
you like Lex Luthor?
so for me, Lex Luthor, it was Michael Rosenblum's, and I'll agree with Ryan that Gene Hackman was a phenomenal Lex. I mean, it's kind of like the whole Bond argument, right? Is it Connery or is it Brosnan? Like,
Mhm.
well, somebody like walked so the other could run. They're each equally good, but like Connery laid the groundwork of what Bond is, and then Brosnan just took it to the next level.
Mhm.
I think that's kind of what it was with Hackman and Rosenblum. So Hackman laid the groundwork of this awesome, super intelligent, hates aliens, finds out that Clark Kent's Superman, and like I think a part of him feels betrayed, but a part of him feels like he has to protect Earth. That like Clark Kent, while he says he's here to do good, is a liar because Lex Luthor is two-faced.
Mhm.
He is so lost in his own ambition to say that he's doing good to protect Earth that he's missing the fact that there's larger threats out there like Zod and other Kryptonians or other threats of aliens that have come that he's too narrow-minded on Superman. And I think that's what makes him an interesting villain is that I don't remember so the Gene Hackman Lex Luthor was an older version of Lex Luthor. He wasn't the version of like I want to be friends with Clark. No, he's like he finds out Clark Kent is Superman and he goes after him.
Mm-hmm.
But when they did Michael Rosenblum and they did kind of the younger version of Lex and they had Lex's father, Lionel Luthor, which oh my gosh, I love the guy that played Lionel Luthor in Smallville. It was really cool to see. It wasn't he like it was so much fun. Like you always know of Lex being the big bad, but you see his Lex as a child. You get more of Lex's backstory of like losing his hair, the meteor strike that happened that littered Smallville with all these kryptonite shards all over the place, right? And it the that was what caused Lex to go bald, which was an interesting way of going about it. And then you see him as a kid growing up, and he's a pretty innocent kid, and all he wants to do is be friends with Superman or Clark. And Clark always wants to keep him at an arm's length, which I think if Clark would have been more trusting, and I get why he doesn't want to. His parents the entire time, don't tell anybody, don't tell Lana, don't tell Lois, don't tell anybody that you're actually an alien because they're not going to understand. Well, maybe if they would have given more credit to his friends, he actually would have ended up protecting himself, and he actually probably would have had an ally in Lex Luthor. Because Lex wasn't evil, Lionel was, at least in the show. And so the way of how you slowly saw Lex's kind of descent to madness throughout the entire 11 seasons, 10 seasons of Smallville, sorry, I really like that. So that was what really drove it home for me was Lex being more of a relatable character as he doesn't start off as a villain. He starts off as just this really curious type, really brilliant dude. He's rich, so he's kind of misunderstood and hated by a lot of people like Lana and et cetera, et cetera. Until he proves like, no, I really want to help. Like, Clark, why won't you just let me help? And Clark's too much of the righteous type and the I can't tell anybody because, blah, blah, blah. And that was what set Lex on his warpath. And once he did find out, it was the whole classic trope of a superhero. You lied to me for all this time, so you are bad. You're the real villain. I'm the hero. Can't you see that? You lied all this time, so how do I know you're not lying about being bad? And so you're wondering, like, well, is Lex really evil or does he have a point? Like, you've seen what Clark's like when he gets on the red kryptonite. So maybe Lex has a point, right? So those were the things that Smallville really pointed out of like the humanity of Clark, making him more of a relatable hero. Seeing some of the Smallville or the Justice League people show up, Aquaman, Green Arrow. They really just had a phenomenal cast with Smallville, and they really made the character of Superman and his story more enjoyable and just more, just in general, just more relatable. So that's for me. I kind of went off on a tangent, but Michael Rosenblum's Lex Luthor will forever be my favorite. And
I'm with you.
I haven't met anybody who topped it. Some people enjoyed the guy. What's his name? Daniel something who did it in the DC movies. The same
Wasn't it
dude
Jesse
from Now You
Eisenberg?
See Me.
Oh,
Jesse
Thank you.
Eisenberg?
Yeah.
yeah.
hmm
Yeah. I did not like him. I thought that was a very weird choice for Lex Luthor.
It was an awful choice for Lex Luthor, and um,
You could
Jesse
pick up
Eisenberg.
from yes.
He was weird. He was just like this like whiny college boy like playing basketball like hair. Lex has never had hair. Ugh, gross.
Well, the Gene
Uh,
Hackman one did, but yeah.
oh, did he?
Yeah.
Man, but he went bald though, didn't he?
I mean, he's balding, like it's a real receding hairline, but no, it's not like the accurate comic book Lex Luthor.
That's cool.
Okay. I forgot about that. So interesting.
It's all good.
I don't know. I Jesse Eisenberg didn't do it for me, and I'm like wondering why like they bring Deathstroke in at like the end of Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice, and you're like, You've literally got Manu Bennett from the CW shows who played Deathstroke to perfection, and you're bringing in the dude who played Flash Thompson from the original OG Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies.
But that's where we talked about
Like,
DC never connects their shows with their movies when they have the opportunities.
Mhm.
So
So I
we're
do
gonna
want
have
to
sorry,
I do
Ezra
want to
Miller's the
ask.
Flash. Last thing I'm gonna say.
yeah.
Hashtag we don't like it.
Nope.
Uh,
Please continue.
do we think that we need is there ever can we think of any superhero supervillain tandem where they're equally interesting, or I guess equally bad would probably be easier, but it almost seems like you have one of them is going to be better than the other, and like one of them is going to be good and one of them is going to be mediocre, because you have, like we've been talking about, you have a great supervillain and their backstory and their character is super interesting, and then the hero's like meh. And then in Marvel, you have such tragic, really, almost every hero in Marvel, with the exception of maybe Captain America, you could argue is some form of anti-hero because of their backstory. They're darker, they're grittier, they have more to them as a hero, and the villains are kind of like there. So I mean, it's not a perfect one size fits all, but it seems like there's some type of connection between how good a hero is as far as like a character and how cruddy their villain is.
I go ahead, Nathan.
I was just gonna. It's just real quick point. I think Spider-Man has some of the best villains in all of Marvel. Um, Kingpin, he's a Daredevil and Spider-Man villain, but Kingpin counts. Green Goblin, most specifically, like Norman Osborn, is a pretty tragic backstory. He was never a bad guy at first, but like all these like military funded projects that he was losing, and he had to figure out a way to prove that it would work. So he ended up using himself. And now this is what they did in the movie and the comics. I don't remember if it was specifically exactly that way, but there's renditions and versions, and everything kind of blurs the lines. But between him and Otto Octavius' story was pretty sad. I mean, the dude really wanted to help people. That's all he wanted to do. And then the chip got fried and his arms took over him. Another version of kind of like why AI is kind of bad, like Ultron, you know? All Hank Pym wanted to do in the comics was create something with Tony Stark that could be brilliant and innovative and help with not only Stark's Iron Legion, but also to do things at Stark Tower and across for many of the Marvel heroes. And that was one thing they didn't do in the MCU. I wish Hank Pym would have been involved with Ultron's creation, but Bruce Banner and Iron Man, Tony Stark, all right, I'm okay with that. Especially Bruce being a brilliant scientist, especially on the realm of gamma radiation, and Stark just being a genius all across the board. And dude literally created a new element. Congratulations, sir. You've created a new element. Um, but yeah, even par villain and heroes, I'm gonna go with Arrow because I think Arrow's got the most on par even heroes and villains both. Arrow's backstory is tragic because he's this whiny brat of a college kid, partier. Then he gets abandoned on Lian Yu on an island for 5 years, and then he comes back to Star City, and he finds out that all the things he did maybe on the island or in China, and I'm talking about the TV show right now for clarification. Um, and he worked with Deathstroke on the island, but then all these interweaving ties, like the whole Mirakuru serum, Slade ends up kind of going insane, and Oliver has all of these demons and these villains coming back to haunt him when he gets back to Star City, realizing all the things I thought I was doing to prepare myself to make my city better when I got back are now coming back to bite me. And each of these villains had interesting backstories. Malcolm Merlin, he lost his wife in the Glades. Some gangbanger shot her, and Malcolm Merlin just wanted to level the Glades to get rid of crime, but he wanted to be a mass murderer, and completely forgetting about what his wife, who was a doctor, she literally wanted to help people. But because he lost her, that drove him on the path of, if I don't level the Glades, then I'm not doing her memory justice. Slade Wolf and Deathstroke, same thing. Um, Raja Ghul, not as really a tragic of a backstory. He's kind of just more of a it's Raja Ghul. Anyways, I'm done rambling. One of you go.
Well, I think you're on par with something there, and I know you said it earlier that you were like more of a B superhero, like that's where the stories kind of like your favorite characters are. And I think when you were talking about Kingpin, the Hell's Kitchen group, like the heroes and the villains that revolve around Hell's Kitchen, and you can include Spider-Man in that. I think all of those kind of complement each other very well, and they're all like, I'm not super overpowered, but I have like an interesting backstory. We're both beatable, and you could see me beat you in a scenario, and they very kind
Yeah.
of like are even keeled. But to argue with you a little bit, and I'm not a huge Batman fan, but earlier you called him very boring, and I think him and the Joker are one of the most complementary pairs. And
Yep.
I think it's because Batman kind of has that side story. Yeah, he has a tragic backstory, but he refuses to kill in some situations. I know there are other series where he just goes ballistic, but the idea that he tries not to kill the bad guys, but that in turn causes him more work along the line, whereas the Joker is willing to kill anyone. And the fact that they have to pit each other against each other constantly in that regard complement each other so well, and either one at any moment could have the upper hand. But that was one of my issues with Superman, like just to go on a little slight tangent. Was you give Superman those scenarios outside of Kryptonite, his one weakness that they try to exploit was humanity. So you have two people on the other side of the city. One's going to die from this and one's going to die from that. And you say, Superman, now you have to choose. Now, I go into that scenario, I'm like, he's going to save both. Like, he's going to find a way to save both. There is no part of me that believes he's not going to accomplish saving both. But you put Batman in the same situation, like the campy movie with Two-Face and the Riddler, and he has to make the decision between the two. There's a part of me that buys in, like, how is he going to accomplish this? How is Batman going to succeed? I want him to save both. How is he going to be able to do it? But with Superman, there's no question. There's no question he's going to save both. I don't believe for 1 minute that both those people are in true peril because of what they have built him into. So that's like
Mhm.
my difference between the two. And like where I think Batman is not the most interesting hero for me, but he has enough built up that his awesome villains bring him up to them a little bit. Like so he's more of a supporting hero to the villains, but I think the Joker Batman just complement each other so well that it brings him up to the Joker's level for me personally.
I mean, and I'll add to what you said. It was like the situation in The Dark Knight where you had Rachel and Harvey. Like Rachel got blown
Hmm.
to smithereens. She's gone.
Yep.
Like Batman couldn't save them both, and he ended up going and it ended up he went to the wrong place, if I
Hmm.
remember correctly.
Yep.
He got to Harvey and not Rachel, and still Harvey ended up. What's that?
Joker tricked him.
Yep.
He's like a dog chasing cars. I want to know what to do with one if I caught it. But like like you know um whatever doesn't kill you simply makes you stranger. So yeah, no, like Heath Ledger's Joker was the one of the best, like rest in peace. But
For
that's the
me,
thing about uh-huh.
I think you guys have hit a lot of the superheroes, and that's kind of sad to say because I really can't think of many others. Like even Red Skull is just twirly mustache villain with evil intent, and he's Captain America. And I will do say that I want to kind of compare Captain America to Superman in the sense that Captain America is the golden boy of
Marvel.
Yeah.
MCU,
Hmm.
and he's all the goodness that Superman has without being a perfect character. He's still a human. He has to make decisions, and he can be beaten in other ways. Uh, but that's Golden Boy superhero done right. That's side tangent. But
Mm,
again, like there's no real great superhero supervillain against the Hulk. I mean, you have other super strong beings, but it's just angrier and different colored Hulks.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah,
from my
Thunderbird
perspective,
Ross was about the closest one we were going to get,
yeah.
but um,
But I love what you said,
Thunderbolt.
Nathan, is that Spider-Man is probably the outside of the Batman Joker, Spider-Man is probably the best in the Hell's Kitchen group. But I will say Daredevil probably carries that more, at least in the MCU TV shows. I don't know the comics so well for Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, and Iron Fist. But I will, because that mainly because of Kingpin for me. But Spider-Man has enough villains with an interesting backstory. Green Goblin being number one,
Oh yeah.
and the Kingpin crossovers. But those are a great complementary pair as well, where both are super interesting. You love to hate Kingpin, you love to hate Green Goblin because they're so interesting.
I was one thing in Spider-Man 3 they actually did get right was like with Harry's Hobgoblin. Like they actually kind of got the whole like humanity emotional part of that down. Like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is dealing with the symbiote, right? Like his emotions are completely like his inhibition to see reason. He's just like, and I'll never forget the like da 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 da. No one will ever forget. Bam, get the pointy.
Oh,
Da,
so
da.
bad.
We'll never forget that scene. Okay. Um, but he goes up to oh, little Goblin Jr. You gonna cry? That was so that was there's parts about Spider-Man 3. There's like they tried to do too much by bringing in Venom. I think just having the symbiote suit Spider-Man would have been good enough. And then all right, Venom ended up like the symbiote fell off, and it kind of was like one of those end credit scenes, like the symbiote finding Eddie Brock at that point in time. That would have been a better use of that. Focus
I
on
agree.
Sandman, focus on Hobgoblin, and that's enough for Spider-Man 3. That would have been enough with if you really needed something else to bring them together, you could have, I don't know, maybe there could have been something else. But the thing is with like, talked about the Hell's Kitchens ones, Elektra, Stick, The Punisher,
Mhm.
Jessica Jones, Daredevil, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, which the show was about enough to make me want to hurl. But the literally the worst they could have done with any of the shows was the Iron Fist.
Mhm.
Um, it's- Iron Fist is such a cool character. Like whatever. Anyways,
And I think
so Spider.
that was flawed because they wanted to get to the Defenders like they did with the Avengers, so they had to put him out so that they could do it.
Yeah,
But it was such a rush show just to get to that next stage that it made the next stage equally as bad because they
Yeah.
rushed that character. And he's not a
it's
strongest character to begin with, but
don't mess up Danny Rand, okay? I don't like you messing with Iron Fist. It's like that'd be like if they did the Punisher wrong, all right?
Mhm.
Because the Iron Fist is a really cool character. We had only ever seen him in like the video games prior to that.
Mhm.
That was really it. And like Daredevil was the only Marvel show that they did spot on that wasn't part of like besides Agents of Shield. Agents of Shield was awesome because you
Mhm.
you saw the behind the scenes with like Phil Coulson and all the stuff leading after the first Avengers movie. Like, oh, Coulson didn't die, and this is why how he got resurrected because of what Nick Fury did, et cetera, et cetera. You kind of saw some like cameos with like Lady Sif coming and like um Maria Hill and different things like that. And then you got like the episode of like the Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider, which was sick. You
Mhm.
had the whole Ada AI technology stuff with John Hanna's character, Holden Radcliffe, Dr. Radcliffe. You had all these really interesting like weaving strings leading all the way up to like Quake and the villain that they had who he took all of that material and controlled it. I can't remember what his name was, but it's always the B characters. That's where you find the most like interesting stories because these people aren't OP. They're not overpowered. I found more in common with Phil Coulson's story and Agents of Shield than I could really find in a lot of like the MCU movies. Like I love Tony
Especially
Stark. Superman sucks, all right? Like I said starting off. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Superman's character it's not that he sucks himself. It's that it was proven in Smallville. He can be good if you give him those those human ties, those vulnerable parts, things that make him go off of the rails when you add somebody in like a very well fleshed out Lex Luthor, and then you bring him and other people to have his back and show that he's not better at everything than all of them. Green Arrow has something to add with technology and fighting skills and money and wits and connections. The Flash is really fast. He can do things with time travel and he's intelligent. Aquaman can talk to fish. That's about all he's good for. But
All right, here's a quick question: Who's a better superhero, Superman or Aquaman?
uh, this is sad, but Aquaman, unfortunately. Um,
I'd still
Right?
take old school cartoon Aquaman over Superman just for like
yeah.
the
Heard it
comic
here.
relief over like
Oh my gosh.
You've
but
heard it here.
uh,
Team Aquaman over Superman.
Sad when you're
Three
when
for
you're
three.
when you're asking who's better, Aquaman or wow, two of the worst heroes in the DC universe, and you have to like. I know I talked a little bit of crap on Batman earlier, but honestly, at the end of the day, Batman's a cool character in the sense of like he has his motivations and his morals that he refuses to toss up. Now, Ben Affleck's version of Batman was the old, tired, fought crime for 25 years, whatever, willing to kill somebody, willing to go after Superman with a kryptonite suit and literally kill him because he's fed and sick and tired. All the stuff that happened with Zod and how they tied that part was actually cool. How they tied that into the Dawn of Justice, I was like, we're starting off strong. And then literally 15 minutes into it, they took a giant crap and it was awful. And the Doomsday fight was the worst part of all of it. And why are we bringing in Wonder Woman? What the heck does she have to do with any of it? Oh, because we wanted to tie her in for the Justice League. And then about the Justice League, and that movie was garbage. It's like the extended one was better. Like Steppenwolf is automatically one of my least favorite. Like, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to bring in Darkseid. You're not going to bring in Darkseid, so at least in the extended Zack Snyder cut, we got to see a little Darkseid. But
Mm,
Steppenwolf is quite frankly a disappointing villain. Out of
mm.
all the choices they could have chose for the Justice League, whatever, I don't care. Okay, here's something
I,
that will make what's that?
oh no, go.
Just gonna say, the Justice League, literally, the only thing good about the Justice League movie, the original, was Jason Momoa as Aquaman because everything else was quite frankly trash. And that and Jeremy Irons as Alfred. And that was it. That was really all I could really relate to because everything was just literally and Ben Affleck was okay as Batman. Oh, you know what? I'm not gonna hate on him too much. Um
Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed an episode where we crapped on a lot more superheroes and nerdy things than we did enjoy them.
yeah. I do have one closing note though. There is a YouTube video that made me hate it so much for like a year. It stuck with me where it was a versus. I forget the person, but they do so and so versus so and so, and it was Superman versus Goku, and they had Superman win. And I was so enraged for so long. Like I would go to random people I knew that were nerdy or knew about both, and I'd be like, "Have you seen this video?" And the gall they had to have Superman beat Goku, and then like they tried to justify it for me, and like they were like, "Oh, well, this would be this version of Superman is the strongest Superman," but they had like this god tier Superman of going into the sun and becoming stronger and coming back versus like Super Saiyan 2 Goku. So like they're taking the top tier Superman you could possibly have and putting against almost the bottom tier Goku you could do. And it made me hate Superman even more than I already did because of that video. And maybe I'm biased because of Goku, but yeah.
no, Goku wins.
Face palm
Goku
go.
Yeah,
Literally the weakest form of Goku beats Superman. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. But apparently, they did not agree.
Goku can blow up planets if he really so choose to. Like Superman can't blow up planets. I mean, One Punch Man could beat Superman. Okay. Uh, Luffy could beat Superman. I'm so sick and tired of everybody. Superman wins. He's better than everybody. He's great. He's awesome. No, Superman. No.
Yeah.
Thank you, College Humor, for pointing that out. Hope starts with an H, stupid. You're white bread. You're boring. Got your powers
Absolutely.
from a different atmosphere. Your villain's like a 1950s Hugh Hefner. Mine was Bane. He used lasers to take off his arm. You would use it to heat up an old woman's porridge. Oh, excuse me, madam. Is that porridge too cold?
But yeah, so just to leave you with that thought that there is a video out there that claims Superman could be Goku, and I think it's absolute crap. But yeah,
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Completely
And
agree.
you've heard it here, so you know it's true because everything we say is nothing but. Um, bias while it may be
We got
sometimes, but you've been listening to another episode of the War of Nerds podcast, Trash on Superman style. And
please argue with us.
please
yeah,
do. We want you. We want you to come yell at us because that means we've struck a nerve. And that is how the War of Nerds begins.
Mhm.
And then we can engage with you. So if the only way we get to engage with you is by pissing you off, then we'll just make more videos where we talk crap about different characters. I'm good with that. No, I'm kidding. But legitimately, put in the comments if you have a certain arc in the comics or a TV show, or what your favorite version of Superman is, or your favorite version of Lex Luthor, your least favorite, what you appreciated about the old school Superman films versus the atrocities that came out with the DC movies. The only reason that they didn't completely die in a tank is because Henry Cavill saved them. So, I mean, if he wasn't doing it, I mean, it would just, yeah, anyways. So,
And I will
um,
say Henry Cavill is the mecca of nerds, is
Mhm.
the top tier uh, awesome nerd. So can't talk bad about him. He's pretty awesome.
he takes his real seriously. I mean, he's, uh, Geralt,
Accurately.
The Witcher. I mean, uh, Clark Kent, Mission Impossible. He's great. He's a nerd. He's fun, and yeah. So this has been the Trash Talk Superman episode, and as always, the bearded nerdy, your bearded nerdy hosts are always here for you. And just to give you a little old school nostalgic, do 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 funky fantasy, do 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 the bowl, do 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 Stratoceros, bum. It's the War of Nerds, Superman sucks edition. See you next time.